But a major new study out today finds that 1 out of every 4 people told they have depression could in fact be reacting normally to some of life's more troubling times. Here's ABC's David MUIR.
Researchers were taken aback by their own findings, arguing 1/4 of Americans who appear to be depressed might not be. Instead, they could be sad or grief-stricken, just as anyone else would be.
It's normal to be sad after your spouse dies. We're arguing it is also normal to be sad after another terrible thing happens, like you lose your job or you get divorced.
Right now, those other hardships are not considered when evaluating a patient. Hundreds of thousands of medical professionals use the same checklist issued by the American Psychiatric Association to diagnose patients with clinical depression. They ask, are you depressed? Do you have a lack of interest, loss of appetite, little sleep? Are you lethargic? Do you have fatigue, guilt, lack of concentration, or suicidal thoughts? 5 or more of the symptoms, and you're clinically depressed. Researchers poured over thousands of those checklists, and they say of all the people who would have been labeled depressed, a significant number of them were dealing with the kind of loss and trauma that would make any of us sad. Still, many doctors say the checklist, though simple and too broad, helps more than it hurts. Arguing whether patients are labeled clinically depressed or not, they still need help. David MUIR, ABC News, New York.
ABC's David MUIR joins me tonight. David?
Charlie, this decision by CBS came late this afternoon. It was just this morning Eimus said he was done apologizing on the radio. Tonight, his bosses at CBS decided he's done on the radio. The move comes just hours after Les Moonves met with the Reverends Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. As they left, no decision had been made. It was last week Eimus used racially loaded words to describe the Rutgers women's basketball team. They had just lost the NCAA finals.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm going to tell you that now.
I know we're at a young age, but we definitely understand what is right and what should be done.
The decision involved more than morals. It involved money. Eimus brought in a reported $20 million a year for CBS Radio and reached about 1.5 million radio listeners every week. Eimus and his radio show had a long history of off-color remarks. Just last year, he called his own bosses the Jewish management, and he used other words to describe them as well.
This was part of his charm, but when he went too far, he became his own worst enemy.
And though he said he's done apologizing publicly, this morning Eimus said he was still planning to meet with the Rutgers women's basketball team. In an appearance on the Oprah program today, the Rutgers team said they were trying to keep the time and the location of that meeting private. But Charlie, tonight we have no way of knowing whether or not this meeting will still take place in light of today's firing.
We cover it all, starting with David MUIR in Blacksburg. David?
Charlie, you talk of those signs, those red flags, and they were glaring here on the Virginia Tech campus. And we learned today those signs came long before this student gunman unleashed his simmering rage on Monday. Campus police learned from an acquaintance of Cho that he might be suicidal. He was taken to the police department, met with a social worker. A temporary detention order was obtained, a judge marking Cho was mentally ill and in need of hospitalization and presents an imminent danger to self or others as a result of mental illness. What is not clear is just how long Cho was at that facility and who decided it was okay for Cho to return to Virginia Tech. And for the students on campus who knew Cho, knew that he was troubled, there are so many questions now about what could have been done. John Mavilia went to high school with Cho and then Virginia Tech. But predicting that this could have happened.
Exactly, is impossible.
And we've also learned this evening, while at that off-campus mental facility, he met with a doctor who decided he was only a danger to himself and that outpatient care would be enough. But Charlie, we have no way of knowing tonight how much of that care he received. And of course, authorities are now looking back at all of these decisions, wondering, were they the right ones?
David MUIR reporting tonight from Blacksburg, Virginia. Thanks. We're going to begin with ABC's David MUIR. David?
Charlie, good evening to you. On a day when this campus learned just who the gunman was, that was not the important thing, at least not here. What was their first chance for this campus community to come together, and they did so by the tens of thousands. It was powerful for them and for the president, too. This was the first opportunity for this campus to gather, and the enormity of it all weighed heavily on the students, the parents, and the professors who came today. For the president of the college, who's had to answer tough questions about his school's response to the shootings, there was nothing but a standing ovation. Did it make a difference for you?
Yeah, to see everybody there after what had happened, it was pretty special to see all our fellow Hokies there with us, you know.
There is a candlelight vigil planned for this evening on the campus, their second chance to come together as a community this evening, Charlie. And coming out of this convocation today, I talked with so many of the students. They said their favorite part, the Go Hokies cheer, their fighting spirit certainly still alive here.
And we're going to hear that a little bit later. David MUIR reporting tonight in Blacksburg. Thanks.
There were so many of those young victims. In fact, some of those children were tossed through the broken windows in the home here behind me. One of the fathers, a New York cab driver, got a frantic cell phone call from his wife. She was inside with the children, said the home was on fire. He raced home. It was too late. The loss is enormous. 22 people lived in what is now a hollowed building, all part of an extended family that moved here from the African nation of Mali. Nearly half of them are now gone. Overnight, their screams could be heard across the neighborhood. From an upstairs window, a desperate mother began tossing her children through blinding smoke. You caught 2 of the children?
2 children, yes.
In your arms?
In my arms.
The 2 smoke detectors had no batteries. Authorities say all of this heartbreak could have been prevented.
We know today that over 90% of all homes have smoke alarms in them. The problem we're having, over 50% of them are not working.
Tonight, fire officials are actually handing out smoke alarms in this community. This neighborhood is really crushed by all of this. And authorities are hoping as this entire nation prepares to reset its clocks this weekend, that we'll all take a second look at our own smoke detectors at home, Elizabeth.
All right, David MUIR, thank you.
We're not honest.
Colorado retiree Mary Lou Foley and her husband look over the adjustable rate mortgage that was once their saving grace. It is now their worst nightmare. The Foleys are among the millions of homeowners who took advantage of adjustable rate mortgages with low interest rates. Others turned to subprime mortgages, as they're called, that overlooked bad credit. These riskier mortgages are now under the eye of federal regulators who are proposing stricter guidelines for banks. Experts say lenders are now scrambling to police themselves before somebody else does. Experts say it's a scenario that will likely repeat itself for months to come. David MUIR, ABC News, New York. From Main Street to Wall Street, today's foreclosure numbers are foreboding. As housing prices shot up, mortgage companies were lending to people with questionable credit. Now, 900,000 homes are in foreclosure across this country. And it's not just the homeowners feeling the pinch. Pensions, stock funds, 401ks, all invested in those mortgage companies, once raking in fast profits. Now some of those same companies are going under. Federal regulators now want mortgage companies to stiffen lending criteria, but many analysts say it's too late. The massive foreclosures have already begun, creating a ripple effect, felt from the stock market to the housing market to the supermarket. David MUIR, ABC News, New York. Hundreds of immigration officers raced into this New Bedford, Massachusetts factory, arresting the company's owner and rounding up more than 300 suspected illegal immigrants. They're now being held at a former military base as deportation proceedings begin. Today, there is outrage. Advocates asking, what about the children whose parents never came home? After the raid, the Department of Homeland Security now says it is unaware of any children left in what it calls inappropriate settings. But today, Massachusetts governor sent this letter to Congress saying he's concerned that many of the illegal workers might be too afraid to admit they have children here. Is it possible to crack down on illegal workers without their children suffering?
No, it is not possible.
Children, some of whom are still waiting for their parents tonight, as law enforcement tries to crack down on illegal workers. David MUIR, ABC News, New York.
And we start with ABC's David MUIR in Enterprise, Alabama. David?
Charlie, good evening to you. The last of the bodies was removed from Enterprise High School here behind me today. And you know, there were hundreds of students in the hallways here waiting for that severe weather to approach. They were used to these kinds of drills. In fact, some of them were actually listening to their iPods yesterday. But when that tornado hit, they had no idea it was going to be like this. It tore the roof off an entire wing, where science students and their teachers held on to one another.
The lights went out. We didn't know what was going to happen. The walls fell down. That's when our teacher, Mr. Smith, started to shield us, too, with his body.
But it was in the center of the school, in the third hall, as it's called, where the walls collapsed and the roof caved in. It was there 8 students were killed, many of whom were buried under the debris. Tricia Moga was in that hall, and when it was over, she couldn't find the students who had been sitting next to her. As the tornado headed toward the school, the students and teachers were doing exactly what they had been taught. They held a drill just last week, but no one could have prepared them for a direct hit on hall number 3. The governor believes if the students had been let out earlier, they would have been home alone or out with friends. School was still the safest place. And there was praise today for the teachers whose job it was to help parents find their missing children, not knowing how many of those children would actually come out.
They must have been so frantic.
Oh, they were. And it was very emotional as a mom, but even more so, the kids they're looking for. Tried to sleep, can't sleep.
Tonight, the White House says the president plans to visit this region over the weekend, and the governor of Alabama maintains that this school was still the safer place, pointing out had those students gone home, many of the homes in the surrounding communities were completely destroyed, Charlie.
David MUIR, our thanks. And here's ABC's David MUIR. David?
Charlie, good evening. Just last week, the former Senator John Edwards was asked how his wife was doing. He said she was cancer-free. That's what they both thought. She then got a pain in her side, had it checked, and today, with his wife by his side, the former senator said the cancer is back.
Is this a hardship for us? Yes, it's yet another hurdle. But I've seen people who are in real desperate shape who don't, first of all, have the wonderful support that I have and have no place to turn. I expect to do next week all the things I did last week. You're terrific. And the week after that.
Before Mrs. Edwards shared this new battle with cancer with all of the reporters here today, she said she and her husband explained this to their children. Their youngest children are still 6 and 8 years old. As for her treatment, the doctor said today they are looking at all options. It will begin soon. And Charlie, it could once again involve chemotherapy.
All right, David MUIR down in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.